parents who sent in questions for the town hall meeting. We will be answering your questions, and hopefully this will give you important information on how AISD will be reopening the school on September 6th. I will now turn the meeting over to David Brooker, our Director of Teaching, Learning, and Innovation, who is going to be the moderator for the meeting tonight. David, over to you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you find yourself in the world. I am David Brooker, the Director of Teaching, Learning, and Innovation, and I'm going to help to MC our town hall tonight. Just a quick introduction of those that are present. We've got our Superintendent and Deputy Superintendent, Steve Herrera and Bill Pearson. We have our 3 division principals, elementary, Jeff Overly, middle school, Jennifer Bertram, and high school, Bob Doyle. We have our Director of Facilities, Kapil Bahara, our Director of Athletics, Mike Deneve, and we have our Director of Technology, Integration and Innovation, Annie Almakinder. So several weeks, about 3 weeks ago, there was an announcement for the town hall for questions to be submitted. And what we've done is we've compiled and grouped these questions together. So if you submitted a question at that time, then we should have an answer today. The 3 categories that we've kind of grouped them in are safety, health, and wellness, virtual learning, and also payments, tuition, and others. Just a reminder that this session will be recorded and will be available later to the AISD community. If you do have other questions that you would like to pose as you're listening to our town hall, and if you're watching on Facebook, then you can type those questions in. We will keep a record of those questions and we will respond to them at a future time. A reminder to the whole AISD community, we recently sent out 2 documents. One was a presentation on our learning scenarios moving forward, and another was a more detailed reopening guidelines for our school start on September 6th. And we will just a little bit more about those scenarios, learning scenarios, and the phases for our reopening from September 6th. So thank you. And our first set of questions that we will begin with will be in the category of health, safety, and wellness, which Kapil Bahara, our facilities director, and Steve Herrera will help to answer. So I'm going to ask the first of a couple of questions from our parents. And this first question for Kapil, what is AISD doing to improve air quality, ventilation, filtration of the classrooms and other facilities to protect students, faculty, and staff? Kapil?
Thanks, David, and hi, everybody. So indoor air quality has been a high priority for the AISD board and leadership team. Our goal is to improve the indoor air quality for the entire school. We will be installing a new system that will provide fresh, clean air and greater ventilation to all occupied spaces around campus. We are targeting to complete this project within the first semester of the school year, but that will largely depend on the COVID situation. In the meantime, we have built control strategies for increased ventilation and filtration based on the guidelines from CDC, WHO, and primarily ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers. These guidelines that are designed specifically for school reopenings include checklists for building readiness, modification of our current systems, and mitigating any risks specific to our situation.
Thank you, Kapil. I've got one other question for you in terms of facilities. And this one's about cleaning. How often will the classrooms be disinfected? If they are daily, will there be an outsourced team to do so? As this would probably be too much for teachers. Kapil?
So the facilities will be cleaned on an ongoing and regular basis. There is an adequate school cleaning service team for these duties. And based on the different phases, we will ensure that the cleaning and disinfecting will comply with current best practices. The cleaning team has been trained to meet and exceed the established protocols and guidelines.
Thank you. I've got a few more questions in this health, safety, and wellness category for Steve. Steve, once school is face-to-face, And if infections rise, what is the likelihood that school will return virtual only?
Thank you, David. While we don't know the likelihood, we will outline clear guidelines that will determine how we move between the different phases that we will establish. Yes, it is possible that we have to return to virtual learning after being face-to-face or using the blended model. This information was included in the 2 documents that David talked about previously that we sent to the parents through email this week and is now posted on our website. And later, Rod Doyle and the leadership, the principals will be talking about the different phases that we have developed in our plan.
And moving on to the next one, knowing that Bangladesh is under high risk countries as far as COVID is concerned, would we consider continuing with virtual school at least until the end of 2020? Furthermore, medical care may not be adequate to support if something happens.
Thank you, David. AISD is committed to returning to face-to-face learning as soon as possible based on the recommendations of CDC, WHO, Government of Bangladesh, and other guidelines, and also using information from other schools that have currently reopened and went back to face-to-face learning. AISD will open for face-to-face learning dependent on the conditions being appropriate for the level of health and safety for returning students to on-campus learning. If we cannot open school, or if we have to go back from face-to-face learning to virtual learning, we will continue to do so. But we will take into consideration the medical and safety and well-being of our students, staff, and community before we switch from one phase to another.
And this parent question is about protocols that we're developing. What are the protocols the school follows when we return students to campus? And how can I, as a parent, ensure that my child is washing his hands every so often and maintaining his distance?
The protocols that involve adequate social distancing, sanitation, wearing masks, and other guidelines that have been established by CDC, WHO, Government of Bangladesh, and other agencies will be used by AISD. Again, we shared these guidelines with the community earlier this week. And to answer the question about how can I ensure my child is washing his hands every so often and maintaining his distance, students will be taught the necessary skills and requirements, and these will be built into the regular day routines of instruction and classroom management, just like they were prior to us going to virtual learning.
This question is about quarantine. What are the plans for quarantine in the event that a teacher, staff, or student contracts COVID-19 and tests positive?
Over the last 3 to 4 months, we have a number of staff who have been trained in contact tracing through Johns Hopkins. These staff members can help identify, recommend who should be quarantined based on the training guidelines. We will arrange students and teachers in cohorts, and therefore we'll be able to maintain the quarantine to a smaller group. If we do have to quarantine, it will be over a 2-week period and will end when there's no longer any symptoms. The health officials from the U.S. Embassy and Dr. Atkins, our family health practice doctor, will be aiding us in these recommendations as well.
And the last question from this group on health, safety, and wellness concerns COVID-19 case numbers here in Dhaka. And the question is, if case numbers are increasing in Dhaka, is it safe for the school to open face-to-face? And how can we ensure the safety for all?
The first priority, the health and safety in the community is paramount. When the time is right, classes will resume in small cohorts to limited exposure to large groups of people. There are multiple phases to reopening classes that will occur over the months as the situation in Dhaka is assessed. There is inherent risk for all around the world with COVID. This is a problem that many schools internationally, I'm here currently in the US, and they're facing these same dilemmas right now. We've put in our procedures in place to limit the risk, and we shared our plans earlier this week with the community. So we just want to make sure that if we do return to face-to-face, we are safe, your children are safe, our staff is safe, and that is paramount in our preparations.
Thank you, Steve. We're going to move to the next category of grouped parent questions, and these all pertained to virtual learning, the process of virtual learning. And for these questions, we're going to bring in our principals, Rob Doyle, high school principal, Jennifer Bertram, our middle school principal, and Jeff Overly, our elementary school principal. So starting with Rob, this has to do with our phases and our plan to return. And the question is, what is the plan for returning to full face-to-face schooling during the 20 to 21 school year? Rob?
Okay, thanks, David. Hi, everyone. I hope to see you back in DACA pretty soon. So for that question, our primary concern is the safety of faculty, students, and all individuals who are on campus. Therefore, we have developed a multiple phase plan for returning to full face-to-face schooling. We do want students to be back on campus and are committed to doing that in a safe and orderly plan. So the first phase is virtual learning. If health and safety concerns do not allow us to have students on campus, we will offer our curriculum virtually. Virtual learning will be a blend of daily synchronous and asynchronous work for students. The second phase, phase two, is blended. It's a combination of virtual and face-to-face learning. Virtual learning will be enhanced by face-to-face instruction once per week. When we first bring students back on campus, face-to-face instruction will occur once per week for 2.5 hours, either from 8 to 10:30, or 10:30 to 1, or 1 to 3:30. And the reason for the staggered starts is just so that we have a different flow of students coming onto campus, so not everyone's there at the same time. This will allow us to ensure our school entrance and social distancing procedures are appropriate. During this phase, students will come to school in small cohorts to limit their interaction to a small group of peers and teachers. On the days students are not in school, they will be supported by their teachers virtually using both synchronous and asynchronous learning. Phase 3, which is a blended virtual and face-to-face, this stage has the same protocols as phase 2, but students will be on campus for 2.5 hour sessions a week. So phase 2 is once per week that students are coming, and then phase 3 students are coming twice per week. Phase 4 is a combination of blended virtual and face-to-face. The next stage will have students start to move between classes and follow a modified schedule. So this is more like the routine of having classes like in secondary school A, B, and C blocks, and students would be moving between classes. Face-to-face instruction will be enhanced by virtual learning on the days students are not in school. And then finally, phase 5 is full face-to-face learning, and that's when we're at the point where everyone at school can come on campus again, and we hope to get there sometime soon.
Thanks, Rob. The next question is going to be for Jennifer Bertram, and it's about virtual learning and the process of it. And the question was, if we have to use virtual learning at different time periods throughout the year, how will it look different than it was in the spring of 2020? Jennifer?
Yeah, thanks, David. Hi, everyone. So in terms of how virtual learning will look different than it did in the spring of 2020, we learned a lot from our prior virtual learning experiences. And so what we learned will be using to make modifications. And our main goal is to provide the best practices for virtual learning. You'll notice that there are some visible changes in our virtual learning this year. And at all levels, those changes will include the following. Firstly, communication via our new website, which I think you already received information about, and that will help both parents and students stay informed. Secondly, we will increase the number of parent-teacher conferences so that we will have one at the end of the first 3 quarters rather than 2, as in previous years. Thirdly, we will provide more synchronized learning opportunities for students so that they can connect with their teachers and with their classmates in real time. And then finally, like we've been doing, we'll have a continued strong emphasis on creating community and creating those connections for students. So any of those things that we attempted in the spring of 2020, we're now including and building upon for this next school year.
Thank you, Jennifer. For the next couple of questions, I'm going to bring in Jeff Overly, our elementary school principal. Jeff, the first question for you was, can students participate in virtual learning if they are not in Dhaka? Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, the quick answer to that is yes. If we're in full virtual learning again, the students can participate wherever they're located in the world. However, it's important to note a few changes that are being made in our processes in all divisions this year for parents. First of all, we're in the process of getting all faculty and staff back to Dhaka. So virtual learning will be conducted from the same place rather than spread throughout the world by the teachers. And with that, as Mr. Doyle mentioned, it's going to be a blend of synchronous and asynchronous learning again. But the synchronous learning is going to take place on Dhaka time. So the synchronous learning is going to take place between 8:00 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. in every division. So it's most ideal if the students participating, because of the timings for the synchronous learning, are in Dhaka or in the surrounding regions, but it is possible for kids to be able to participate in our virtual learning from other parts of the world as well.
And I'll get you to help with the next question as well, Jeff. Some students required a lot of parent support during last year's virtual learning. Will parent support still be required during 2020 to 2021 virtual learning? Jeff?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I fielded this question quite a lot last year, especially with the parents of our younger students who don't have the independent skills. We do understand the difficulties that parents have, especially our working parents. But with virtual learning, and especially with our younger students, there's going to be the need for some parental support. Our hope is that the increase in synchronous learning will decrease the amount of parent support that's needed. And we also hope that our plan for moving to a blended learning model, where the students start spending, different amounts of time on campus and face-to-face learning, will also decrease the amount of direct parent support that is needed. But the reality of that, the answer to that question is there is still going to be the need for parent support, but it'll vary depending on the age of the student.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll come back around to Rob for this next one, since it deals with the IB diploma program. The parent question was, can the IB diploma program and the learning philosophy it entails be taught online? Rob?
Okay, thanks, David. So this is something that schools all around the world are facing. So we're in the same boat as everyone else. But from our experience with online and virtual learning, definitely face-to-face interaction is the best way to learn. And we as a school AISD, we're going to work towards having face-to-face classes again when we can. Small and larger learning online groups will continue, as learning together helps everyone learn. So this is not only true for our IB students, but everyone else in the school. Students will learn and retain real learning outcomes in a virtual scenario and with face-to-face time. So with virtual learning, teachers were giving new content and students were retaining the new content. Some classes, such as science, will need lab sessions. And so we are going to take that into consideration when we get back to school, and we can start like phase 2 and 3, so that when students are in school, we can organize something with labs. Some IB courses are taught online. So there's a whole bunch of courses that students take in the world where it is not face-to-face learning, but they're online classes. And students have successfully been taking these for years. For our seniors, we are starting them 2 weeks ahead of time this year to give them a little bit more time and also to meet the days of a regular school calendar. Back to you, David.
Thanks, Rob. This next one is for Jennifer, and it's about building community. The parent question was, how will teachers build community with new classmates as we begin the year with virtual school? Jennifer?
Yeah, thanks, David. So again, like I said previously, throughout the 11 weeks that students were learning in the virtual environment in the 2019-2020 school year, we learned a lot about student engagement. And so we were able to come together and reflect on lessons learned during that time in virtual learning. And so our intention now is to take those lessons learned, move forward with them, and continue with the community building activities in September. We're also planning on spending the first several weeks of virtual learning in September creating class culture routines and mimicking what would happen in the first couple of weeks of school regularly in regular face-to-face school. So setting up those routines and class cultures is very normal. And so what we've learned is that we can apply those same principles to our new virtual school year. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. This last question for this category on virtual learning is going to be for Jeff. And the question was, when AISD moves to blended or face-to-face learning, will my child be able to continue with virtual learning exclusively if we do not feel comfortable sending him or her to school, or it is not possible for him or her to attend? Jeff?
Thank you, David. Throughout phase 1, 2, and 3 of our plan, 1 being virtual learning and 2 and 3 being the first stages of blended learning, if you as a parent don't feel comfortable sending your child to school, in all divisions, we'll be able to continue to meet the needs of your child, through virtual learning. However, once we move to phase 4, and phase 4 is really the transition from, that's where face-to-face starts to become the majority of the time that the student is spending during their learning, it'll be much more difficult for us to be able to maintain virtual learning for kids who stay home, because the teacher's attention is focusing significantly more on those face-to-face interactions.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you to all the principals. Those were all the parent questions surrounding virtual learning. And again, just a reminder, anybody who is on the Facebook feed right now, and if you do have other questions, please refer to our documents that are being posted on the website, and feel free to ask them questions in the Facebook feed. The last category that we have is on payments, tuition, and other questions. And for these, I'm going to bring back in Steve. And Steve, we'll start with the first one here. Parent question on, can we be allowed to pay the tuition fee in 2 equal installments, interest-free, as a special case this year? Steve?
Thank you, David. Yes, the answer is yes. I have received many concerns from parents and about the payment schedule and the installment interest fee that we have in place. We are allowing parents to pay in either 2, 4, or 6 installments if needed, and we are waiving the 2.5% finance fee that we normally charge. So yes, they can pay in more payments. They would need to send me an email, and then I can share that with the business office.
And this next question is tied in with that as well. And it's about the first installment deadline. Can the first installment deadline be moved to the end of August instead of the end of July? Steve?
Thanks, Dave. This is a difficult question for us because this answer depends on student enrollment. So we are saying that the first payment must be made on or before July 30th, as we need to prepare for the number of students who we are going to have enrolled at our school. So July 30th is when the first payment is due. I also need to know how many students are enrolled for 2020-21, as this has an impact on the number of staff we need to retain. As you know, we have kept all of our staff, but if we don't have a certain number of students, we will have to either furlough or not retain certain staff. So this is why July 30th is very important. It gives us over a month to prepare for the beginning of school. I have to have the number set, and then we have to move forward with that number, whatever that number. So it is imperative that everybody do pay their first installment by July 30th, but we are being flexible, allowing 2, 4, or 6 payments and interest-free.
Thank you. And this question is from families that are outside of Bangladesh. And the question was, what if we stay in the US for the fall semester and if things improve, will there be space for our child in the spring semester? Will NVR families, Bangladesh students, be allowed to stay outside of Bangladesh for 6 months to a year and have their spots saved when they return? Steve?
These are two difficult questions to answer because first of all, we have to look at, there are 2 different criteria. We have 2 categories of applications at our school. We have VR, these are visa required students, meaning that they're expatriate families. And then we have the NVR families, or the non-visa required, which are Bangladeshi students. If you are a VR family or expatriate family and you stay away for 6 months to a year, it depends on if there is space available. There are some classes that we have close to 36, 38, or 40 students. That's our maximum at this time. And if we have a spot when you come back, that will be okay for them to come back in. The other answer to this is the NVR. We understand that we have limited number of spots for each grade level because there is a cap for each grade level in the preschool, elementary, middle school, and high school. And if there is space available for them when they return, yes, they can return without any problem. I did have an emergency board meeting, and we did talk about this instance because I have received several emails from MVR parents, and the board did say they will allow MVR parents to be away for 6 months to a year during 2021, but they do have to pay the school tuition for this year. This is what we did. This is what we've done previously. So if somebody wants to reserve their spot, they can reserve their spot, stay away for a year, but they would have to pay the full tuition. The board did tell me that NVR parents who do decide to stay away from school up to 6 months or a year, and there is a spot when they return, they have priority over anyone else coming back next school year for the NVR category. This is what the board said at this time. The board also mentioned that we can revisit this at a later date, but for now, NVR parents who want to stay outside of DACA and return next year must pay their tuition to save their spot. I know this is a difficult situation, but we as a school, I have to feel if somebody were to leave, an NVR position were to leave, I have to fill that spot with another local student. So that's because if we don't have the enrollment numbers, then we have to lay off staff, and that's not what we want to do. So we do have to keep our enrollment up to keep people employed, as well as provide the services of education to those students and parents who want to enroll their children at AISD.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, two very difficult questions there. This penultimate one kind of ties in a little bit with being outside of Bangladesh. The question was, if my child is outside of Bangladesh when school begins, how will they get the materials they need?
The teachers, David, will make every effort to make the learning materials available in their Google Documents, if at all possible. We do have a new website that will allow our teachers to put all of that information in. Parents will be able to see that. Students will be able to do this as well. The teachers will let students know in advance if they need specific materials that they need to purchase. Let's say they had an art project and they needed some crayons or some pencils, something like that, that would normally be available in school or at their home, but they're not in their home, then they would have to purchase those for that specific class. But the teachers would let the students know well in advance of the materials that are actually needed.
Thank you. And our last question, processes and protocols for next year. And the question was, are there plans for the second wave?
That's always a big question. Everybody's talking about that worldwide, about the second wave. If you review the guidelines for reopening school that we shared with our community, we have created our continuation of learning plan for the upcoming school years so that we can be flexible and respond to the situation as appropriate. In some cases, we might be in one phase, like let's say phase 4, where we're face-to-face 3 days a week and virtually 2 days a week, and we may have to go back to virtual learning or back to another phase. So we have to be flexible. We will let the health, safety, and well-being of our community take precedence in making these decisions. It's not going to be an easy decision to make, but we have to make sure we provide that safe environment for our students, our staff, and our community.
Thank you, Stephen. That brings us to the end of the parent questions that were submitted. I'll turn it over to you, Steve.
Okay. At this time, I think we've answered all the questions that the parents have sent us. As David mentioned, we are recording this, and you have mentioned other questions, so we will answer those questions as well. I want to let everyone know that the leadership team will be back in Dhaka on July 29th or 30th, and we continue our plans of opening up school on September 6th. I want to thank everyone for your attendance today, and hopefully you gain more information about the reopening of school on September 6th. I would also like to thank the leadership team who have been working throughout this holiday period, making sure our plans are in place. It's not an easy task. Many schools are doing this, and vacations are cut short, or we have had a little bit of vacation and a little bit of working as well, like many of you have been doing as well. But we have our plans in place. We've shared those plans with the community, and we hope that we do get back to face-to-face learning as quickly and safely as possible. In final closing, please stay safe and healthy. We look forward to the start of school on September 6th. And now I would like to turn the meeting back over to David Brooker for some final comments. Back to you, David.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you everyone on the leadership team for being here this morning, this afternoon, or good night, wherever you may find yourself. Just to reiterate what Steve has been saying, that a lot of work and effort has been going into preparing for September 6th, and with the commitment to opening to face-to-face learning as soon as possible, with the health, safety, and wellness of all of our community members in mind. We've been fortunate to have received research and information from many, many international schools that are going through the same process that we have. And this has helped to inform our protocols and procedures. the 2 documents that are going to be posted and have been shared with the school community. You can bookmark those documents, and when new information is added to them and more protocols, you can go back to the same documents to find that information. And as always, please share your questions or concerns that you may have. We are all excited for the school year to begin, and we know there's going to be a challenge that is going to require all of us to work together to make this successful for learning and for wellness. So thank you, and wherever you are, good night and stay safe.